treasure trove of untold stories, powerful lessons, and profound wisdom. Through authentic dialogues and insightful discussions, we aim to unlock these treasures, one story at a time. So, whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. Get ready to be challenged, inspired, and transformed. And now, to guide you through this journey of discovery, please welcome your host, a visionary leader and a true catalyst for change, Dwayne Dwyer, but we affectionately know him as the Mindset Coach.
Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of the Hearts of Men podcast. We're your host for this evening's conversation. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach, and I'm joined by my brother, Mr. Tawami Gaddy, the son of Timothy, also known as the Available Man. Bro, how you doing on this beautiful Friday evening?
Man, you know, it's Friday, and even though we rolling out here like I don't know, they're the best example, but I was about to say, anyway, just the two of us. You're gonna use them there. But man, I feel good. I feel, Fridays is a high point. It was a crazy week, professionally, personally, but we're here, me and my brother, we're here to do what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. Pretty busy week for me as well. But you know what? It's Friday, like you said. Always look forward to Friday evenings. And one thing I do believe wholeheartedly is that we both would give everyone that's here the best that we got on this evening. So that being said, we want to make sure that we welcome you. Thank you guys for being here. You could be anyplace else, but you chose to be here with us on this beautiful Friday evening, and we do not take that lightly. And on this channel, we like to recognize you by your name because we want you to receive your flowers now. So that being said, want to say good evening and welcome to this evening's conversation, Crystal Everett, His Divine Appointment, Quiet Storm. Yes, it's Maya. Miss Charlotte Jordan, as always, it is a pleasure and an honor to see you. Miss Adrian Artist, good to see you. M. Gamble, good to see you. Welcome. Miss Robin Brower, good to see you. Lisa Keys, good to see you and welcome. Listen, if you have not gotten into the comment section and just spoke, by all means do so. Again, we don't bite. We just want to make sure that you feel welcome because this is our community and that's how we like to receive you. Quick admin note, again, we're 1 week out. I say again, we are pretty much 1 week out from our event next Saturday. So if you have not registered yet, make sure that you get your seat. Do so by scanning that QR code in the upper left-hand corner. My upper left-hand corner. I don't know what corner it is for y'all. It might be y'all rights. Nonetheless, it's up here. Right here. My bad. It's right here. Go ahead and scan it. Get your seat and reserve your seat. That way that you can take part in this beautiful webinar because I think you're going to be in for an awesome treat. Is there anything else I want to share? Anything else you want to share that the people need to know?
No, that's it.
Okay.
This year is moving along, so
It absolutely is. Make sure, if you haven't already, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed, make sure that you hit the like button also because the algorithm loves that, and share it with somebody who you think will benefit from this conversation because we are about to take flight. Why do I keep ending up here? I'm grinding, hustling, doing everything right, but my life continues to look the same this year, the same as it did last year, the year before that, and the year before that. And if I can be completely transparent with you, it is not your fault. You were taught that effort alone would change your life. But what if the real problem isn't how hard you try, but who you believe you are underneath it all? Tonight, we're exposing a hidden force that keeps 99%, I say again, 99% of men stuck. Not just men, people in general. The identity trap. If you've ever felt like you're reliving the same reality, no matter how hard you try, how hard you push, this conversation, if I may add, is definitely for you. So that being said, I really wanted to kind of jump off into something real quick. I wanted to keep that short because I think we need to unpack some things. So you hear a lot of people talking about identity out here, and they say identity this and identity that, and you got to understand who you are, so forth and so on. And then you hear people say, "Well, I know who I am," and then you hear people say, "Well, I don't want to lose myself in relationship." But I really wonder if we understand completely what we mean when we use terms like identity. So I kind of want to start off by talking about it just a little bit. So, first and foremost, this is what we mean when we say identity. Identity is the set of qualities, belief, personality, traits, appearance, or expressions that characterize a person or a group. Agree or disagree? What would you change? What would you add to or take away?
I, it's something, I don't know what it is,
Mhm.
but this is something that's missing in there. But
Okay.
as a base though, I agree. I like it.
Okay. Cool. I think we may identify that something that's missing as we progress. Now, it's not just identity, but it's also understand how identity is shaped. And identity is shaped by many things, both internal and external: personality, culture, relationships, experiences, beliefs, gender, and other factors all combine to influence how we see ourselves. Thoughts, concerns, issues with how identity is shaped.
No issues with it.
Okay. All right. Very good. And I think the last one is what we call identity formation. And identity formation is all about discovering and developing one's potential, choosing one's purpose in life, and finding opportunities to exercise that potential and purpose. Thoughts, concerns, or pushbacks?
These are good baselines, yeah. Because
Okay.
we're gonna build, there's always something, but I already know we're gonna build. We're gonna build. So I love where it started.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Now, as if I may, I will start off by saying this. Um, there's a trap that most of us exist in, and not just men, women as well, just people in general. And we think success is all about working harder, doing more, having more discipline, trying different strategies, and pushing through resistance. But the brutal truth is that you can't outwork a broken identity. And trying harder from the wrong identity just simply burns you out. Now, that being said, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate that. That being said, the first talking point is your subconscious identity runs the show. And why do we say that? Because in all actuality, 95% of your daily actions, choices, and reactions are controlled by your subconscious identity, not your conscious intentions. And William James said it best: the greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitudes. Science has also confirmed, and it shows that 90 to 95% of our behavior is subconscious, shaped by deep seated beliefs and habits formed by age 35. And I'll say it again: deep seated beliefs and habits formed by 85. I mean, by the age of 35, not 85. So, question is, how does that collective identity of men in our culture reinforce the patterns we see in families and communities? How does the collective identity of men in our culture reinforce the patterns we see in families and communities?
So I understand different communities look differently, right? Where you live, what your ethnic background is, heritage background is, all these things play a major part in what community looks like, belief as well. But how does the collective identity? Because you can tell based on the strength of the family structure in the community, right? And I'm careful with this one because somebody will look and say, well, this person has a strong family, so that means it can work. We're not talking one-offs, because you you're gonna find an exception in any rule you put out there, right? But when we look at the landscape of the family, the landscape of the household, that tells you that kind of gives you that key of what the collective identity of the men in that community is. And unfortunately, most of our communities today, in today's world, is that identity factor. Part of it is not fatherhood, not in the sense of what it should be. Right? We know that you're all right. I'm a father because my seed bear children. Right? But anybody playing around at night can do that. Right? But when we look over the collective, where is the fatherhood in the identity of the men in our culture? Right? Where is husbandhood in the identity of the men in our culture? Where is leader in the identity of the men in our culture? Right? We're more focused on, and I'm just saying it how I see it. We're more focused on being hustlers, pretty boys, dope boys, pimp, whatever you want to call yourself. You know that I know it's my era when we say I don't know what you heard about me, but all jokes aside, we see that collective identity is playing a major role in what our community is today. I may not be in a home, but guess what? Some fatherless child is looking at that person singing that song about being the PIMP as a role model because of the collective identity in this community took fatherhood out of that identity. And I'm just speaking frank on this one. So I think it plays a major role. And I know you said how does it reinforce the patterns we see in our families and in our community? I think it drives it.
I so love your depiction of that because I think you're right. I think, and I always like to go back to childhood because childhood development is very important when it comes down to this whole concept of identity. And if I have a misaligned identity of manhood, especially when my identity given to me by manhood isn't governed by a higher doctrine, it's governed by maybe what somebody's seen, maybe what somebody did not like in somebody else or whatever that looks like. Now, what we're doing is we're shaping identity to be what we think it should be. And unfortunately, that young boy is going to grow up to be a man. And then that young man will end up, in some cases, not a lot of cases, but in some cases, have a child at a very young age. And so now this young adolescent male is still trying to figure out manhood and now trying to raise a young boy and not necessarily giving that young boy a properly structured identity. And so, because you've seen it when we were growing up, it was cool to have a lot of women. It was cool when you had like 7, 8 people calling you at the same time and your nephew, just be calling a spade, your nephew taking messages and delivering the messages to you as soon as you walk in the door, right? It is what it is. And so you think that's cool growing up because you don't know no better. And at the end of the day, you look at TV and you see what they depict me as on TV, and it's like, yep, pretty consistent with what I'm seeing. And so now what ends up happening when you get to that age as well, where you start practicing some of those things that have been modeled to you. And I think just like you said, that ill-structured identity matrix ultimately reveal itself in that young adolescent teenager because they themselves don't necessarily know anything different. But then when they get older, they got to go back and restructure and clean all of that mess up just so that they can exist in a more healthy and a more authentic place of manhood. And I think that by itself can be problematic for the culture and the community overall, because at the end of the day, now who is driving driving the train? And let's be honest, a lot of, historically, men have created some problems in our community that it takes men to solve. So that's just kind of like my thoughts. Anything else you want to add to that before we press forward?
No, I think you drove it right there at the end, right? Two things has to happen. I think so often we look at the track just one rail, right? But we got to realize there's 2 trains on this track, right? And Yes, men have to fix it. Men have to fix it. But what does that mean? That means women have to support it. I'm there was a time where it was appropriate, even on this platform, where it was appropriate to talk about the governmental influence and infiltration into how our family structure became shaped.
Yep.
Okay, now that we have identified that, do we just continue to say, well, we're going to continue on with the destructive patterns that the government pushed on us? Or we're going to stop talking about the government and saying we're going to right the ship ourselves? When we look at the scripture, here's how scriptures applied. When I look at, we always say, come what may, come what may. That means, most of the time, that just means if I get sick, I'm still going to say, thank you, Jesus. If I lose my car, I'm still going to say, thank you, Jesus. But what about when the men ran out the house and it's time to put the men back in? That means women have to step back a little bit and let the men right the ship. Because guess what? We're going to get it wrong, because in large, we haven't been there for a couple of generations. And so, yes, there's going to be some growing pains. Yes, you're not going to make all the decisions by yourself. Yes, you're going to have to step out and let him step in. And that hurts. That hurts on the inside, because in our generation, a lot of our women were taught that they had to be the strong one, that they had to be the one out front. And so when we say come what may, that means to do I want to do it the way that he established it here. And that means I have to get out the way. And even for the men, to step up into a position that you've been able to just sit back on, because for some of us, it's only hard when you're fighting for it, when you're trying to get that access to the children and you can't. For some, if you can condition your mind to turn that off and just say, well, I'm gonna pay the check and I'm gonna sit back. But what happens once you open the door and say, come in and take care of these kids? My bad.
No, you're good. And you're absolutely right. And I think it's just like, and I really hate giving these analogies, but these analogies make sense after I use them, right? It's just like whenever an organization is not necessarily performing, or there's some toxicity in that organization, or the culture is just bad. Well, the first thing they do is they go in and they fire all the leadership. That's the first thing that a brand new CEO does, fire all the leadership, because what they're trying to do is create a new culture. Well, going off of what you said, and generally the way that corporate America does it, the current leadership has to be fired in order for the culture to have because we got to go back and remember what identity is. It's not just in one person, right? You got to look at it. It's, characterize a person or a group. So in order for that group to have a properly formatted identity, it takes the persons in that group to have a properly formatted identity. So one person in the group that doesn't have a properly formatted identity causes another person to have a not so proper identity, and therefore assuming responsibility that was not your responsibility to begin with can actually exacerbate a current problem that already exists. So I like where you're at, because you're absolutely right. It's going to be painful. It's going to be frustrating. It can be debilitating at times, because everything you knew to do, you're going to have to take a step back. And now we relearn this process together as a culture. And I think that's important for us to digest and process. So thank you for that. And thank you, everybody, and all of your comments that you're putting in the comment section. By all means, keep them coming. Don't hold anything back, because we'll get there in a hot second. But I kind of want to peel the Band-Aid off the scab real quick, because we need to talk about it. Looking over the modern landscape, do you believe the church helps or hinders men in renewing their minds and breaking old identity cycles? And if so, or if not, in what ways?
Man, you wanted to do this early, huh? Okay.
Might as well.
Boy, I tell you, Lisa quick, boy. She ain't playing. Lisa is quick, man. But I mean, let's talk about it, right? Here's the thing. In the current landscape, we're building mega millionaires as pastors, flying $1 million jets, living in multi-million-dollar mansions on hundreds of acres. And like, not every preacher, right? Let's just put that out there, because some preachers be like, "Where my money at?" We ain't talking about you, all right? But we're talking about the overall landscape, because let's not act like some of you non-millionaire pastors ain't trying to present yourself as if you're a Creflo or a TD. I digress. But in the current landscape, they're getting their spoils now.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I mess that up? If this is what my aim, when you talked about success earlier in your intro, it's not about if I work harder, if I put more hours in it, the identity don't change. But here's the thing I realized. Well, if success is measured by what I'm trying to get to, and if what I'm trying to get to is carnal, and I receive the carnal thing, I'm not going to change my identity, because most people don't like to admit it. We think that we can chase carnal and gain spiritual in the process, and it's just not how it works.
Go back and say that part again. Say that part one more time.
We think that we can chase carnal and get spiritual in the process, and you can't. You are only going to bear the seed of what you are planting, watering, and that you are tending to. And if we're tending to the flesh, then after the flesh, we shall reap corruption. All right. Because I know we like to put our Bible verses out there, right? But that's what Galatians teaches us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we start looking at whether the church is helping us fix or perpetuate the identity that's currently there, it's perpetuating the identity that's currently there. Because as long as listen, you cannot have a community where men are actually in position how God wants men in position and think you finna continue to fool the masses of the people. They understand that. And it's not because men are better or women are better. It's because it is the divine order of God, and it just works out when his order is in place. I'm not better than no woman. I just belong where I belong, and we belong on this road together. It's just how it works. So I'm definitely hanging out with Lisa on this one. Henders.
I don't disagree. And again, like you said, we're talking the landscape, not the eaches. There's some churches out there doing some phenomenal work.
Yes.
And if that church, if you are part of that church, we're definitely not talking about your church. But when we look at the landscape, and it might be the landscape that get televised more than the church that's actually doing the necessary work that needs to be done, right? But I also want to kind of go back and grab a portion of what we talked about a few seconds ago and bring it into this. Because imagine that man that's standing in the pulpit, that man, that shepherd, right? And they themselves don't have a properly formatted identity. And then they're teaching the word through the lens of a not so properly formatted identity. Then the question has to become is, do you think they're teaching the authentic word, or is that word that they're teaching jaded by a false identity? And that becomes something that we need to think about, process, understand wholeheartedly. That's why it's important for us to read and study the word for ourselves. Because at the end of the day, I love the way you said it. If I chase the carnal, I never obtain the spiritual. I know I kind of restructured your words, but I do apologize. But that's kind of like the gist of it, right? If I chase the carnal, I never discovered the spiritual. But if my success is rooted in what the world says success is, then the spirit is not attached to that. So in that regard alone, my success is defined exactly the way the world defined its success. That by itself should be an indicator, especially if I'm a parishioner. That should be an indicator that whether or not this person has a properly formatted identity. And I'm not saying that we go in there to judge, right? It's not about that. But I also get to judge what it is that I do with my life and who I actually listen to. That's the important part. So when we look at this whole question, I have to agree it hinders. Now, I want to make sure I'm saying this. It is in an amazing position to actually do the right thing. I'll say that part again. It is in an amazing position to actually do the right thing, because some people are more in love with the idea of church than they are in love with the notion of being connected with the Most High. And there is where a lot of the problem exists. And because I am conditioned to be in the building, I'm not talking anyone out of the building. I am so conditioned to being in the building, just being in the building makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing. And I may not necessarily be listening to the message, but I'm in the building. And this person's idea of success is worldly: cars, houses, clothes, so forth and so on, right? All that attention grabbing stuff. But at what point are you showing me and ushering me to the throne? That's the key. How are you ushering us collectively to the throne? Because I got to go back and say it, and I'm going to keep saying it until we get it. Not just we collectively, right? The foundation of the community is the household, the home, the family. If the family is the foundation of the community, then the community is the foundation of the church. And if the church exists the way it's supposed to exist, then the pastor gets a seat in the county council meetings or the city council meetings, because he or she is actually the voice of the community and the family. That is authentic representation. But we don't necessarily, I don't believe wholeheartedly across the landscape we have that. So can they do it? Absolutely. But I think it requires us to look at what we're doing and turn from those ways, repent and pray and seek his face. And you should know the rest. There you go. There you go. Yeah. And it's not judgment. Go ahead. It's not judgment though. Go ahead.
No, you right there. You right there where I'm seeing it at is when we understand what it's supposed to look like. I think our idea of success in ministry changes.
Mm-hmm.
How many families do we have? How many families have we helped stay together? Not just how many people I got up here to regurgitate some words and feel good on the inside and cry.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all know all of us had that cry moment and had that emotional high at one point. And when we walked out of that building, that lasted for about another 2 hours, and somebody then not even because somebody cut us off on our way out the parking lot. And all that emotional high turned into a whole different feeling. Right. But what causes the change on one thing I've learned is that atmosphere has to become conducive for growth. That's how growth works. Put a pineapple in the ground up north and see how fast it dies. Has to be tropical all year round.
Mm-hmm.
The atmosphere has to now be completely conducive for that pineapple to grow. But if you plant that pineapple in Puerto Rico or in Hawaii or somewhere in the Caribbean, it's probably going to do what it's supposed to do because the atmosphere there is conducive for that thing to grow. But we have, and so when we say creating that atmosphere, that means we're talking about these family structures, these relationships, right? What manhood look like. Men have to walk like men, and women have to walk and talk like women. It's not about how loud we're singing and how much instruments we got and how, it's cute. It sounds good. It feel good when you hear it, especially at the right time. If they on key too, them and the musician together, it sound good.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the atmosphere that the Most High is looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, talk about it, Lisa.
I mean, that you guys are saying the same thing. I don't disagree with you, right? It has turned into a performance-based theatrics. Um, it's and it's funny because I don't think outside of the government, I don't think the church. I think the church gets as much bad publicity as the government does these days. But it's not the fact that they get the bad publicity; it's the fact that they put themselves in position to get the bad publicity. So let's not focusing on you know people videoing what's going on in the church. Let's focus on the things that are happening in the church that is video worthy for those people, right? You got certain people who are chastising musicians in church service, but that should have been choir rehearsal. They should have practiced that during choir rehearsal. That's not church business at that point in time. You were there to serve the people, not to get your vocals right, get your musicians tuned up and tuning them up in public. Not necessarily. I'm not talking about the instrument. I'm talking about the musician itself. Tuning the musician. Come on, man. What are we doing? Right? But how can we say that I'm an ambassador of Christ if I'm chastising this young man or this young woman in public? Like that, I can't connect those two things together in my mind. I can't lock the doors in my mind, right? I can't connect. What was it a few years back doing New Year's swag surf? That's what it was.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I can't.
yeah,
Yeah, I can't connect those in my mind.
yeah.
Like I'm struggling, but you have to realize that these things are coming from a place of a faulty identity.
Mhm.
So
Well,
we can, I'm sorry, go ahead.
it's just when you said that, it just made me think. Like I remember when I was trying to be sold out and do it the right way. I was so disconnected. I didn't even know what the swag surf was. Right now, granted, that was years later when you know when the shift happened for me. But
Mhm.
I couldn't. A lot of people be trying to play back a lot of. Oh, this was during your time. It honestly wasn't because at that point I made a choice, and so I never understood. I could never understand it, and so when I realized that there was a disconnect between me and my battle buddies in arms in that direction, I had to make a shift. I had to make a change.
Yeah, yeah. And this is, and I want people to understand, this is not judgment, right? This is just observation. I'm that person. I'll embrace anybody, and we can talk and reason together. I think that's the notion. Let's come reason together, but we're going to reason together according to the scriptures. We're going to reason together according to what is supposed to happen, not what's currently happening. Because I'm not going to sit and justify what's currently happening, especially if you show me and say, "Hey, according to this right here, bro, you ain't supposed to be doing that." Okay, cool. He said it. It settles it. There's no pushback I got in me from that. So that's just it, man. I greatly appreciate that. Listen, man, I want to make sure I'm acknowledging some of these things that are being brought out in the comment section because y'all are on it. Robin said the church can guide men to find their value in God's perspective, moving them away from often toxic worldly definitions of success or strength. Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And that's why I said earlier that they're in a great position to actually do that. I believe if we become intentional, like I really do believe that we can help, not just from the church, but from platforms like this and other platforms like this. We can help mend the broken family back together. But it has to become an intentional thing to actually follow what the word says and not what my word is saying. Lisa said it is a show of who can speak better. Where is God? The church has one of the highest environment of divorce that should not be named among the household of faith. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Especially if we're teaching it the right way. So that's man, I can stay there for a minute, but I'm gonna move on because Lisa, you're right on. Adrian said the church can always lead you, but old habits have to be broken by the individual themselves. Absolutely. And I wouldn't just say individual, I also say some protocols. Some protocols need to be looked at and reformatted in order to in the direction of righteousness. Again, if it's about the building, right, then there's some things that we have to do. I get that part, but it still should be done decently and in order.
Can I,
Yep, go ahead.
I want to start by saying I 100% agree with there is an individual responsibility, right, in this thing. I think what a lot of churches do very well is keeping people so busy on quote unquote church business that they forget about the individual growth perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if every time I'm fasting about a new building, I'm fasting about the building fund, I'm fasting about something else, then those things that I need to come up out of me maybe so. Because here's one thing that Christ says: some spirits can't be prayed out alone. You got to come out by fasting and praying.
Mm-hmm.
But if every time, only thing I'm taught about fasting and praying is the corporate, and every time, and we got to understand, we're wearing down the saints when we do that. You wear them down when you do that. You have to have time to live this thing. I went back through the scriptures and I was trying to justify a lot of things. And here's one thing that you realize: they show up when they want to pray. Then after that, they show up on the Shabbat and on the feast days.
Mm-hmm.
They're not wearing themselves out. Then you read about the corporate fasting, but that wasn't about the synagogues or the temple. That was about the nation, the people.
Right.
So yes, I agree, but we can't make ourselves so busy on church business we forget that we have to live this thing out for ourselves.
Indeed. Absolutely. His divine appointment said, I believe it's both. The feminine posture is heavy in the church. I believe the men are hanging back. There are a few that are doing the work. Yep, I agree. I've seen it with my own eyes. Listen, greatly appreciate you guys. Greatly appreciate all your feedback. Again, make sure that you're sharing it so that other people can see it. And if you haven't hit that like button yet, please hit that like button. Good to see you, Queen V, and she is becoming welcome. As always, good to see you guys. Okay, let's keep pressing forward. So periodically, you guys are going to see I'm going to put questions at the bottom. These questions are for you, right? So make sure that you're looking at these questions and considering them from yourself. These questions are not from a man's perspective. It's from a people's perspective, okay? So talking point number 2 is all about the cycle of self-sabotage. Why trying harder fails. When your actions outpace your identity, your subconscious will pull you back, often through self-sabotage. And I know you guys have experienced it. Well, let me not talk about y'all. Let me talk about me, right? There have been things that I've been trying to do in the past. And it's like, I want to do this and I will start doing it. And then next thing you know, these thoughts will come into my mind and start questioning, like, you really think you can do that? Who told you? What makes you think somebody wants to listen to you in the first place? Why are you doing that anyway? Shouldn't you be tired of, all of these different things? So it's almost like a self-protective mechanism that is built around that identity because your ego don't want to let that go. And if you break into this new barrier, you break through this new barrier, now that old identity has to be restructured over time. It's not going to be instantaneous, right? You will actually achieve some type of success. And then even after achieving the success, you'll start hearing those negative self-talks like, yeah, you don't belong here. These people don't even accept you. Like, look at them. They got this, they got that. What you got? Like, you will hear all those things. So again, that identity takes time to be restructured. Like I said, it is deep seated. That's the important part for everybody to remember. That said, 80 to 90% of people relapse on the old patterns within a year of trying to change. And only 8% achieve their goals long term. Let that set in for a hot second. You see it every year. And it's, New Year's resolution, no such thing, by the way. And then within a month, they don't even make it out 12 months. Within a month, I'm like, yeah, I'm going back, sitting on the couch eating potato chips. And I'm only using that as a small example, right? Because the larger the goal, the larger the pullback. That's the thing. The larger the goal, the larger the pullback. So that said, do you, Brother Gaddy, believe self-sabotage impacts men's ability to build wealth or stability in their families and community? If so, how? If not, what does?
So I'm going to start by saying I believe it is a part. Self-sabotage is definitely a part of the impact to man's ability to build wealth and stability. A part of it is information and opportunity, right? Growing up where I grew up, we used to always say our parents didn't teach us about money. Our parents didn't teach us about credit. Our parents didn't teach us about this. Well, When I found out when the credit score came into existence, well, my father was already an adult. So he couldn't teach me about what he didn't know about. And it seemed like some people knew the game immediately. Well, when you create the rules to the game, you kind of get a head start on playing the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really understand the factors that go into it. And here we are in 2026, about 50 years after the credit score came into existence, and we still trying to figure it out as a people. Some people have figured out how to play the game with the credit score, but as a whole, we're still trying to figure it out. So I think a lot of it is information and opportunity, or even opportunity to information, right? But self-sabotage plays a major part of it. But why? Because I think a lot of the self-sabotage comes from comfort. And it's just me, right? I can speaking from my perspective of what I've seen and what I see in our community. Even myself, sometimes when I'm not comfortable looking and seeing money and overflow in my savings account, in my checkings account, money put aside, money invested. I've never seen that on a first-hand basis. It is, but what I do know well is how to survive in the struggle. Put me in the struggle, I'm going to survive like a champ, because that's what I know. And so sometimes I think we begin to manufacture some of the struggles. We manufacture the environments we're comfortable operating in, instead of understanding how to grow with that financial growth. Right? You join the military. They used to tell us, you see young soldiers get in trouble because they got a paycheck now don't mean that they grew up. Living old habits with new money.
Yep. So just to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, yes, self-sabotage is a big part of it, but the other part of it is comfort in an old identity structure. Yeah, I'm agreeing with that wholeheartedly. I don't disagree with any portion of that. And I think because of that old identity structure, a lot of times, just like you said, old habits, new money, right? A lot of times we are trying to bring old habits into a new level, not necessarily realizing those old habits are bringing us back down to the level that we came from. Habits exist on the level of success that you want to achieve. So if I want to achieve a new level, then I must practice a new habit that gets me there. Now, again, this is not just in determination and discipline alone, because I think we've fooled ourselves for years thinking that, discipline, 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 discipline. But discipline does not restructure identity. So I can be the most disciplined person in survival all day long. That just means I survive really well. So discipline does not change survival, right? And I'm talking now specifically in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The lower tiers is the survival, the physiological needs and security needs. Those are lower. So if I want to get up to like esteem and loving and belonging and self actualization, that requires a new restructured identity or a new program that's running the software. If I'm trying to put new software on an old program, that software may require more out of that program than that program can actually give at any given point in time. We have to understand that, because ideally self-sabotage is real. Self-sabotage is huge. And we say we want this, but we don't have the behavior that says that's this thing I'm ready to receive. So then when we receive it, we destroy it. We toss it away. We take it for granted. We do all these other things, right? And so I'm loving the fact that you combined it with comfort in old identity formats, because that's really true. And that by itself equates to self-sabotage. Anything else you want to add before I press forward?
No, I love that. I have a question, right? So how much of self-sabotage do we think are based upon, like, and because we're talking about men, right?
Mhm.
And we were kind of talking a little bit backstage about when we get into that mindset and that whirlwind of thoughts, how much of self-sabotage is caused because we soup ourselves up to just say, you know, just dump it all. Sure.
99.9575%.
That's a large number there.
It is. It is. And of course, you know, I'm joking with the number, but I believe it is a enormous number, because ideally, what you believe generates the thoughts that you have, and the thoughts that you have generate the behavior that you experience. And obviously, your behavior is responsible for the deeds that you actually have. So if what I believe is the beginning of my deeds, then in all actuality, I am not believing that I am capable of the thing, or I'm not seeing myself operating in the thing that I say that I'm believing in. So one of those two things can't be true. I think largely, and I don't care what we talk about. We can talk about finances, we can talk about relationships, we can talk about, you know, family. All of that is true. I think largely, especially when you start talking relationships, now you have two belief systems coming together as one, which is more difficult than that one person reshaping their belief system for the thing that they're thinking or believing that they want to do. It sounds really good through the lens of motivation, but as we know, motivation lasts about that long. So
Right.
now the issue is it motivation or is it more of an inspiration? Is it something internal in me that is moving me into the space according to the inspired spirit, according to the spirit that's guiding me in the direction that I want to go? A lot of times it's not. A lot of times because I see Brother Gaddy, you know, Brother Gaddy is the available man. He's always there with his kids. He this, that, he this, and I want to be just like Gaddy. Well, I'm not called to be like Gaddy. You know what I'm saying? Gaddy is the best version of himself, and there's not another replica out there. So the minute that I look at Gaddy, I want to do that. I want to be like him. I am out of order, because now I am idolizing and or coveting Gaddy. So now I am out of order and I cannot replicate that. Now, can he provoke me to good works? Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's not the same thing. Provoking me to good works is those works that come through my understanding, my identity, my belief system. And it may not necessarily look the same. So I'm talking relationship now. So when you tell me, hey, Gaddy is always doing this and Gaddy is always doing that, and then you compare me to Gaddy, that's your belief system issue now, because you don't necessarily understand that comparison is a problem, especially in the realm of relationship. So now these continuing thoughts that keep going over and over and over and over and over again, and you're busy looking at Gaddy doing this and Gaddy doing that and Gaddy doing this. And in a minute, I'm gonna look at you. So what's up with you and Gaddy? I'm just saying. That's generally how it works. What's up with you and Gaddy? Every time I turn around, you're talking about Gaddy. Or better yet, every time I turn around, you're talking about Pastor said, Pastor said, Pastor said. So we have to really look at it and understand that no one else external to you is sabotaging you. Like, I get it. I don't disagree that there are some opportunities that are more available to some people than there are to others. Not saying that. Not saying that that's not true. But at the end of the day, is that going to be my story? Is that going to be my justification? Did at some point in time when I recognize that that part is true, that I forget the fact that God still sits on the throne and he is the King of Kings? I'm just saying, at some point, competing belief systems start making a problem for you. And when you have these competing, conflicting beliefs, now it's like, I get it. And I agree. Many men were not taught how to build. But guess what? Men and women weren't either. And they believe that they can build by themselves.
Right.
It's a never-ending loop. It keeps happening. It doesn't matter what I can say about anybody external to me. The same applies to me. That's why I keep saying the Bible is written for the reader. Two readings happening at the same time. I'm reading what the word is saying, and the word is actually reading me at the same time. I cannot accept one over the other. If I accept what the word says and reject what the word says about me, then I'm not really accepting what the word is saying. I'm accepting what I want the word to say.
Period. That's how we get to that phrase, Pastor said. Because we're not really saying what the word is saying. We're saying what Pastor said. Many of us don't even know. A lot of us can quote little memory scriptures here and there, have all these quotations, but none of us can't tell you what the context behind it is. But my pastor taught me. Okay.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm agreeing with what Adrian said. In fact, let me put it up. I'm sorry. I'm agreeing with what she said, because you're absolutely right. They allowed the environment to do the teaching as opposed to the right person doing the teaching. And who were supposed to be the right people teaching these men? Their mother and their father, both of them. And when you go back and look at the scripture is specific. It says, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but raise them up in the ways that they should go, that when they get older, they do not depart. So when you look at it, if me, as a young adolescent boy, if I was raised by both my mother and my father, and they were raising me according to his word, the environment, I would sense the environment, because I'm a walking antenna, right? All these senses I got that we were taught in elementary school, that's what it does. It extracts data from the environment. But because of faith, I'm not moved by those senses, right? The data that my senses are picking up, I am moved by what his word says. And that's the thing I stay focused on. I'm just saying, man. Was that now?
I said, you said a mouthful too.
Well, I mean, you said a mouthful the last time, man. I'm just trying to keep up. All right. Is it possible to break free from self-sabotage without a spiritual identity shift? If yes, please explain, because I don't think so.
Yeah, if you found a yes, you got to let me hear it, because I ain't got it for you. So first thing I believe that these identity strongholds, right? And I use that word on purpose, are spiritual. So here's the thing. I think we believe that we don't see the spiritual world at work because we're looking carnally. You just don't see what they call Kadesh, the Ruach HaKadosh at work, the Holy Spirit, the set apart spirit. You don't see that at work looking in your carnal, but you definitely see some other spirits at work. You just don't know that. You just don't know what they are, so you don't identify them as such. So therefore, when we have these identity strongholds in our communities, we're trying to rehab them into a new identity. There's a reason why when you go through the 12-step program, they always identify you as an addict, and you are always recovering, because they didn't give you a spiritual shift. They are admitting that the spirit is still on you. You just learning how to operate in spite of. You got to continue this program. You got to continue to come to meetings. Now become a big brother that's going to help you remember But when do I ever come out of the space of becoming a recovering? When am I recovered? You can only be recovered when there's a spiritual shift.
Yeah.
And you get a coin, right? Yeah. Y'all can go ahead and get your coin. Never mind.
Y'all don't know about that.
So sometimes I want to get churchy, and I'm like, let me shut up.
That's that. So for those who don't know, that's the celebration piece in the 12-step program. So for every month that you achieve sobriety, or whatever it is, you get a coin, right? And then you get a coin for every benchmark. And it is. I believe the 12-step program is a great program, and I would have never known that when I was doing my graduate studies. Part of my practicum was to go and embed myself in an organization. I actually chose a 12-step program at a local church. And when I'd say it was pretty doggone awesome, I think everybody needs to visit it, whether you are addicted to something or not. But here's what I would tell you. You addicted to something. It may not be alcohol. It may not be drugs, but you addicted to something. And I think everybody needs to become It's not just because, you know, we live in an information age. So what somebody probably doing right now is Googling and looking up the 12-step program. You're not doing yourself any justice. You need to immerse yourself in the environment and see how these people have totally surrendered their addiction to the Most High and asking for Him to cleanse them. Like Gaddy is saying, when you look at these things that are happening in real time, not just in the 12-step program, but in the behavior that you're seeing in other people in the world, it is pretty much spiritual warfare at its best. Like you said, it's not the Holy Spirit driving the train, but it is a spirit. And at the end of the day, you know, like you said earlier, some of these spirits you can't drive out unless it comes by fasting and praying. Um, and I'm with you, bro. I just don't see it being possible without a spiritual identity shift. And I talk about it because this is the thing that we believe in. And you mentioned it previously, and I'm glad you said it. We believe that we can have fleshly goals, fleshly desires, fleshly outcomes, looking to achieve fleshly outcomes, and put the spirit in the realm of the submission. But that's not how it's supposed to be. The spirit's supposed to be in an authoritative position. Your flesh is supposed to be in the position of submission. Your mind is always in the middle, right? Because that's the battleground. And so at the end of the day, if you don't recognize that, if you're not intentionally trying to do that part, then the only thing you're doing, one or two things, is you're actually actively pursuing the flesh, or you're putting on a facade that you are spiritual. And it doesn't take long for a person outside of you to see the facade because you can't keep it up for but so long. That's a known fact. And I'm sorry to say it that way. And I'm being as honest as I possibly can be, because it's not a point of chastisement. It's not a point of embarrassment or any of those things. It is a point to where that person needs to say, I need help because I can't do it by myself. And if you really pay close attention to it, no one is exempt from that. Everybody needs help because you can't do it by yourself. That's the purpose of the Ruach. He is supposed to be here to help us continue the work. The first work that I'm doing is in me. If I allow the work to be done in me, then the work can be done through me. I'll say it again because I think somebody really needs to hear that. If I allow the work to be done in me, because let's just be honest, the Spirit is here to help. He wants to help. The only thing that's denying that is me. So if I allow that to happen in me, then the work that is happening in me can also be done through me. And I think that's an important thing for everybody to process within themselves. So I'm with you, bro. I just don't see it being possible to break free from self-sabotage without a spiritual shift. Just my thoughts. Real quick, I know I've seen one. I love this, and I want to make sure I brought this up. Disorder is disorder. When there is no order, we create a toxic community outside of God order. I love what you're saying here. And I would say it just differently. Not that what you're saying is wrong, right? If there is no order, then there is chaos. Those are the only two things that are available. It's just like saying a land without law is in constant war. Those are the only alternatives. That's it. That's why when you look at the kingdom has structure. The kingdom has laws, statutes, and commandment. The kingdom has a king, the kingdom has a queen, the kingdom has the aristocracy, and then the kingdom has everybody else. The difference is that's what the kingdom of the world looks like. But when you go back and look at what God's kingdom looked like, you have the aristocracy. You have the king, you have the son, right? You have the king, you have the son, then you have the aristocracy. And the aristocracy actually serve one another. So that's just my thoughts on that. Anything else you want to add before we move on?
This right here, I think she said it.
What's that?
And I love that she did that. I don't know if she forgot the S or she just did it on purpose, but God order. I love it. God order. Right? Because we have this mess we call order that we got today. Right? But there's no law, there's no order, right? And we living in, like you said, without order, you're living in chaos and this worldly order. And here's why we read history and we read so many kingdoms keep on falling. They last for a while and they fall because they keep thinking that they can recreate the order and laws of God and operate and create it with them as the supreme power, with man as the supreme power. It's not possible, because the next man gonna think differently. The next man gonna want differently. Just how absolutely. Just how we see the difference between, you know, I was about to give both of these men nicknames that everybody give them, but I'm not. But between Joe and Donald, there's just how I don't think neither one of them had our best interest in heart, but they're vastly different in how just in their political views. Now imagine they solely had power to change all the laws by themselves. How much of night and day we would have came from? You think we came from a complete change? Let there had been a king overthrown another king, we wouldn't know where we stand today, right? So the idea that there is any other order is not order. It's just chaos waiting to implode. And that's why today we keep saying, well, we so close to a civil this, we so close to a civil that, because everything is unraveling, because we're not in the order of the Most High.
Yeah, make no mistake about it. There is such a thing as organized disorder. I'm just putting it out there. Okay. I want to share some things here, and this might take a second. And you know, just bear with me for a second. It will be okay. So first and foremost, the law of consciousness, you don't get what you want, you get who you are. Say that part again. You don't get what you want, you get who you are. So ideally, if you're doing a little simple thinking here, if I change who I am, then I can change what I get. So it's that simple. Your reality is a mirror of your dominant beliefs and attitudes, not your wishes or willpower. You will never willpower your way to the thing that you say that you want, the thing that you really want. And at the end of the day, your beliefs and attitudes need to line up with the thing that you say that you want in order for that to happen. Research on self-fulfilling prophecy and expectancy theory shows that beliefs about oneself directly shape outcomes. Beliefs about oneself directly shape outcomes. So that said, I want to ask this question, and I share my stuff here shortly. How do our shared beliefs as men shape the opportunities and limitations we see in our neighborhoods? How does our shared beliefs as men shape the opportunities and limitations we see in our neighborhoods?
I love this question, because the part where it says our shared belief creates the idea of a unified front within the men in our communities and neighborhoods. And to me, if we are on a unified front, I don't think that there's a barrier that we can't get through as a people. You know, we could look at where we are now. There's people out there saying all kind of propaganda about our community, right? Even some of the people that I used to actually like some of their content, I hear them now. They cherry picking videos to say we're inherently this, we're inherently that, we're inherently this. We're not in, but I digress. But the problem I see is that there is no unity in leadership in our community. So if we talk about putting men back in men being leaders again in our community, then I go back and I say, well, if men were unified as leaders, if we would stop trying to fight against each other and trying to start 1,000 different we don't need another organization. We need to perfect and better the ones we got. And if we don't like the ones we got, let's overthrow the leaderships. We have the power, because they only thrive because we pay into their funds, because we vote people that we never heard of and don't know nothing about into leadership, into these things. But then we'll run and we'll accept the NAACP award. We don't even know what we got the award for sometimes, but we accept it because it feels. But who's the head of the NAACP in your city? I don't know either, right? We don't know, but Right. Not another. Right. But if we wanted to take it back, we have that power. And I think that's why I always believe in. I tell people we are the only people I believe that accepts taxation without representation in this country. Because who represents us? We don't even we don't know the people that's in the organizations leading them. We don't know our local politicians. How many of us went out to vote? Right, exactly. People out there uproar, crying that Jasmine Crockett didn't win in Texas. Well, who went out and voted for her? Right? And I'm not saying she's a good or bad politician now, right? I digress. But if that's who you wanted, you should. But if we were on a united front and let's say we don't like Jasmine Crockett. If we were united in our belief and in our thought, right, as the leaders of our community, well, we would have raised up the one we wanted to run. And we would have pushed them. We would have put them in position. Then we would have voted for them. And then we would have representation and taxation. But we would have some form of representation. So that's how to me, that's kind of how I look at this question, right? Because we have to share belief to, like I said, shows a unity of men, right? And so right there, it kicks down doors.
Yeah.
And so opportunities and limitations, I think they cease, and opportunities, they come in abundance.
You know, I sometimes wonder, and I love your answer, by the way, don't get me wrong. I sometimes wonder, do we have the ability to agree on something other than the thing that we disagree on? Like, think about it. Do we have the ability to agree on something other than the thing that we disagree on? Okay. Let me say it differently. Whatever attacks us as a whole, we can agree on that thing. We may not agree on the solution, but we can agree on the thing that's attacking us as a whole that is unwanted. Now, when it comes down to creating solutions, everybody don't want to agree on participating in the solution for the problem, because at the end of the day, we're more focused on who's going to be in charge of this and who's going to do this and who's going to do that. So and again, it's just me thinking out loud, because when we look at our shared beliefs and how those shared beliefs shape the opportunities and limitations we see in our neighborhoods, I think we see more limitations in our neighborhoods than we do opportunities, because we can't agree on the things that are opportunities. Now, if you show up with a plan and you have already put the plan together and put it in place to where the plan is 100% fully executable right now, and it will benefit everybody else, then everybody else will agree that they can participate, especially if they can do it for nothing, for free. We agree that free is for me, but we don't necessarily agree that investing in me is a good investment. But we'll invest in Nike. We'll invest in Jordan. We'll invest in somebody who won't even think twice about our community. And so when we look at our shared beliefs, I don't think we, for the most part, collectively across the landscape, I don't think we have shared beliefs. We can't even agree on who God is.
Talk.
So if we can't agree on who he is, surely we can't agree on what he stands for. And if we can't agree on what he stands for, then how can I say that I stand for the same thing, the same God?
How can we stand for anything?
That's it.
Not as a people.
No. But for me, myself, me, myself, and I can tell you what I stand for. Because if it's knocking on my front door, it's a problem for me. And if it's a problem for me, I want it to be a problem for you. But do I have that same mindset? If it comes knocking on Gaddy's door, is it a problem for me? knowing that he's my brother? It should be, because I know that we believe in the same God. So if it's a problem for him, it's now a problem for me. I don't need him to call me and say, hey man, this thing is hurting me. No, I'm available to him. That's why I love his title, The Available Man. Right? I know why he created it, but I think that title goes bigger than that. And I believe it's bigger than that as well. I just believe he had an intent when he created it. It's bigger than that. Right? It starts here and it expands outwardly. But it must first start here. And that is part of my belief system. My belief, like he gives us the belief system that we're supposed to have. It's not rocket science. We don't have to make it up. We don't have to go into the lab and mix a couple of potions together and poof, belief system. No. I think it's that simple, but we make it more complicated than it has to be because we argue on the thing that is supposed to give us a unified purpose. And because we don't have a unified purpose, then we can't serve one another authentically, because my focus is to get what I can get out of it. Me, myself, and I.
I would ask this question. If I was sitting in a room right now with 20 brothers representing our community from different communities, I would ask the question, what do we want? Because I don't think we know really what we want, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's funny for me at my age, looking back at King, right? And I talk about King a lot because a lot of older people disagree with me, but that's the point. Before King was assassinated, he was making statements that was making people mad. Like, I think I led my people into a burning building.
Mm-hmm.
What building is he talking about? Now because he's starting to reshape what we want. Did we really want integration, or did we just want opportunity for us to succeed for ourselves? And I don't think we know the difference anymore.
Right.
Because integration turned into assimilation, which means we had to lose ourselves. We heard when I was a kid, I used to hear statements, oh, you're gonna be one of the good ones. Good ones of what? Oh, you well spoken for what? Elaborate. All right, because I was trying to get you to say what you want to, like, make it plain for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what would success look like for me if I worked for a Black-owned business in a Black community? If in order to feel safe and successful and have some opportunity to wealth, I didn't have to make this statement, I need to make it out. Right? Because we are the only community that looks at separation from ourselves as success.
Yep.
Because there's so what do we want? And if we can say together what we want, then I think we can begin to identify. And like, so we talking here, I say everybody, people put in, the Christ conscious. Well, if what we are all trying to get to is we're trying to inherit the kingdom, at least we have a starting point.
Indeed.
And let's not just stop talking to each other because we disagree on how to get there. Let's talk about it. Let's hash it out. Let's reason together. That's what that means. That don't mean you dominate and you are right because you said it and I'm right because I said it. Well, if we can agree on one thing, I tell people a lot of times when people start talking to me about the Bible, if we can agree on one thing, that what's written in here has the final say.
Yep.
Then we got somewhere to go.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I had something I want to add because I think it's important for us to process, because I think there are 5 signs that we're stuck in an identity trap. And the first one is that you start strong, but you always quit. You choose a thing and you want to do the thing, but then you quit doing the thing, right? Number two is you self-sabotage. You self-sabotage right when things start working because you don't necessarily believe that you are worthy of the outcome. Number three is that you know what to do, but you can't do it consistently. Number four, you keep attracting the same situations. And last but not least, number five is you feel like you're fighting yourself. And I really do believe, I don't care who you are, you experienced it at some point in time in your life. If you haven't yet, don't worry about it. Like my grandmother used to say, just give time. You will. It's disheartening. And I want to make sure that everybody understands as they're listening to this. It's not that we're pro-black, pro-black, pro-black. That's not what we're saying, right? But let's just be honest with ourselves. If we don't like ourselves, then how can we wholeheartedly participate and support somebody else? Let that sink in for a second. I'm not saying glorifying myself. I'm not saying, go up to the mountaintop and try to be the next oppressor of everybody else. That's not what we're talking about. If you don't like yourself, then how can you be a honest participant with somebody else and esteem them higher? You can't. Because if my attitude about who I am is so low, me esteeming you higher ain't really lifting you up at all. It might even be beneath how you see yourself, and you don't even want it. I'm just saying. Listen, we're gonna skip that next question. I think it was a good question. It was about economy, but I'm gonna move on to number four. Number four, because I think this is good. The spiritual blueprint, scripture's model for identity shift. Scripture doesn't just call us to do better, it calls us to become new. Identity-based change is more sustainable than behavioral modification. The brain's neuroplasticity allows for new identities to be formed through repeated focus and action. And I think that's the thing that we do a lot. I'm gonna say this before I turn Gaddy loose. I think that's the thing that we do a lot. What we do is we try to overlay a new aspect of who I am trying to become over top of the person that I already am. Well, newsflash, I should not take a flower bed, and get some brand new topsoil and then just put it on a plot of land and then just plot brand new seeds in that topsoil, not believing that the weeds is going to come up faster than the seeds come up. You can't do that. You can't pour new wine into old wineskins. These things aren't just written, it's real. So, how do stories like Jacob being renamed to Israel or Saul being renamed to Paul illustrate the process of identity transformation? I know I got the right person on this one.
Ooh, I like this one. Illustrates the process of identity transformation. What I love about both of those stories is they both played a surrendering role, right? I don't know if Jacob was as willing to surrender as Paul was, but I don't think either one of them was willing. Let's say it like that, because Paul had to get struck blind, and Jacob had to end up with a limp, right? Let's sit on that first off. All of us want a God experience, and we want this identity shift experience. Well, one of two things going to take place. Jacob became desperate, and Christ became desperate for Paul. Like this, if you're waiting, and I don't want to make absolutes, right? But some of us are waiting for God to get desperate, right? Well, maybe he's waiting for you to get desperate. Maybe he's gotten you where he wants you so that you can now, because we don't know who you are in your story. Are you Jacob or are you Paul? And you know if you're Paul, you know when you get knocked off that horse and you had a place to where it's like either this is either gonna go extremely downhill for me, or I'm gonna make a change. Those are my only options. That's how you know you was knocked off your horse. But if you're sitting there and you're waiting, there may be a level of I need the Most High that He's waiting on. Because some of us never get to that point. What I love, and we can't say that Paul never got to that point, because Paul already had a zeal for God. He was just misdirected. He had to actually now learn that Christ was who they said He was. He had once he learned that for himself. See, that's the difference. Because Paul had his zeal, but when I tell you, Jacob had to. He said, "Listen, I ain't gonna let you go until you bless me." And he didn't even understand what was coming. He still what is to come from that is still coming. I'm gonna say that it's still coming from his loins. But one or two things have to happen. You have to get desperate, or he has to get desperate, right? And when that happens, the identity shift does not come from you. And so I do love the fact that you have to play a part in your own rescue, right? I do agree with that. But you have to understand that the final transformation, the name change, comes from the Most High. And that's what we see with both of them, right? And so when we ask the question, how does stories like Jacob name being changed to Israel and Saul's name being changed to Paul illustrate the process of identity of transformation, you have to understand that he's going to do his part. But you have to be prime and ready to receive. Paul had a zeal, Jacob was fighting. Are you there? Or are you trying to ride the wave to salvation quietly? Because I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe you can help me, brother preacher. But I don't see a quiet road. I think there's a lot of people that think that they're working their way there quietly, but I don't see the quiet road.
That is the delusion that we exist in. We exist in a false reality, thinking that it's going to be a peaceable transformation. The reason why I do love these two stories is because I'm going to change the narrative first. Let's go back. Everybody's seen Roots, right? Everybody's seen Roots. If you haven't seen Roots,
what's your name?
What's your name? Absolutely. See, that's the reason why that little segment, although it was, treacherous to look at, it was a significance behind it. One of the first thing that happens back then, is they change their names. Once they change their names, then it's like, I can't even associate myself with what I was given from birth. Same thing here. When you start looking at Paul and you start looking at Jacob, you start looking at Saul and you look at Jacob, because those names carry meaning, not just in, how they seen themselves, but how they represented themselves as well. Because one, the supplanter, he lived his life a particular type of way, right? One, like you said, he had a zeal. It was just misguided. And if you go back and understand the story, it was misguided by his own father. So he was doing what he thought was right. And he was doing it to the best of his ability. Well, now comes in the meeting, the experience, then not just after the experience, you're going to take something from that experience. What you take from that experience is going to stick with you, whether it is physically or whether it is psychologically or a combination of both. Because I promise you, If you walking down the street and you get struck with blindness, you ain't gonna ever forget that. Especially after you get struck with blindness, and then you hear this voice tell you, say, "Hey, why are you persecuting me?" And then you go, and then he said, "Go see this person." You ain't gonna ever forget that. Those are life altering events. The name change is a representation. Again, go back to what we talked about identity. Your name is a part of your identification. Let me go a step further. Men, because that's what this is, the heart of men. Your last name is a huge part of your identity. The problem is, and for those who got this, I'm not talking to you. The problem is that your predecessors didn't put the emphasis on the importance of your last name. Your father may not have told you how important your last name is, and that you need to guard it and protect it, and you don't just give it away to random people that you meet. You make sure that you qualify the person that you meet, and then when you give that person your last name, you know that that person has the best interest of the value of the name, the brand, and the entire family at heart. It's the exact same thing that the queen is to the king in the kingdom. It's not just the throne, it's her king. And that's how she views it. And I think the problem is that we just look at names and we don't necessarily realize the process in the identity formation that comes from the name. So I know I kind of went on my own little personal rant, but I just think that that's so important. That name is value.
Can we bring up Lisa's comment?
Hold on, let me see which one you're talking about here.
I know she been on fire today when she said, I believe God didn't change their names until they changed their hearts. The name just confirmed what the struggle, the surrender, and the trust had already produced in them. And y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. So I don't believe that man can change man's heart. And that's me, right? This is why he tells us to be mindful that the heart is deceitful above all, right? I don't follow your heart, right? Follow the words. What is pretty much what he's saying. Don't go after your emotions. Go after what's true, right?
Yeah.
But in that, I believe that the encounter, especially when I talk about Paul, Christ made an intentional intersection with him on the road to Damascus. I personally believe the moment he got blinded, his heart began to change. Because when he was asked, why does thou persecute me? Lord, is it you? Oh, wait, you just identified that this is your Lord?
Mm-hmm.
It was and it's just how I believe, because Christ says no man can come unto me unless my Father first draws him. So there's a draw, the heart, and when I'm wrong, correct me, pull me back. But I'm not disagreeing. I do believe the name change was the confirmation of the work done, but I believe the work was done by the Ruach.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that is the Spirit's work. That's why I have a struggle ascribing to when people say what we can't do. But not in the era of the Spirit being within me. You're not going to tell me what I can't do. Well, then you tell me I can do all things. So all things should not have a limitation on it. Why? Not because of Christ. I do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Well, why? How does he strengthen me? Because he's given me the Spirit.
Right.
That's where I stand with it.
I will add one piece to what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing, because I think it's a matter of perspective. I think the changing of the heart is not a completed process. It is a process within itself. And the completion of the process ends the process of sanctification. And at the end of sanctification, you're done. So even when you look at Paul, he had some rough starts, right? So I don't think it was the completion of it. I think it was part of the process. I think we can agree with that one. I think it was part of the process. And maybe he had a process because the Bible doesn't tell us this part. Maybe he had a moment in time where he had to restructure the way he think on how he referred to himself. Because let's just be honest. If you knew Saul was coming, you ain't gonna stick around and let him come teach to you. You ain't gonna stick around and let him come speak to you. Really? You know what he does? No, you can't say Saul no more. You got to say Paul coming. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think it happened instantly to where once he gained his sight back, he's like, oh, I'm Paul, let's do this. No, I don't think it worked that way. I think it was a process that was happening within him. And in that process, not only was his heart changing, right, but the way he thought was changing right along with the heart. Because even in the process of him praying and saying that he had these thorns in his side and he asked it to be removed 3 times, we're like, nope, my grace is sufficient for thee. So that's what I'm saying. I think that process is a prolonged process. And I won't say prolonged, I'm sorry, but I think that process is a process, and that in itself is the process of sanctification or spiritual reformation, depending upon who you talk to. And that's what I would add to that. Yeah.
And I don't think that's complete until he reestablishes us in the kingdom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. We're going to do a little something different. I thank you guys for staying with us this long. I know that we're 2 minutes over, but I do not want to leave you without giving you what we call this 6-step framework on how to break free from an identity trap. And what I would do is I would give it to you, and then I would turn over to Brother Gaddy so that he can give his final thoughts, and then I'll come right behind him. And I'm going to give him the question first so that everybody know what the question is when it comes down to final thoughts. And that is, how does a man's identity shift impact his ability to lead, provide, and serve in the marketplace? I'll say again, and you don't have to limit it to just marketplace. Maybe the marketplace is the kingdom as a marketplace, right? How does a man's identity shift impact his ability to lead, provide, and serve in the marketplace? That is our question. Now, to embrace this 6-step framework, I think lasting change requires a practical step-by-step process to shift identity at the root. Visualization, affirmation, and intentional action can rewire the brain and create new identity patterns, which is in essence called neuroplasticity. And so that being said, these 6 steps, to the framework is: number 1, identify your current identity. Ask yourself, who do I believe I am? It kind of reminds us of what, it kind of reminds us of Moses in the Old Testament, right? What stories am I telling myself about my worth, capacity, and future, and what limiting beliefs am I operating from? Okay. Step 2, recognize how it's showing up. Ask yourself, how is this identity creating my current results? What patterns keep repeating because of this identity? And how am I sabotaging myself to stay consistent with this identity? Step 3, choose your new identity. Or as we, as believers, look at the identity the Bible is trying to get you to adopt, right? That's the identity that should have been taught from day one. Ask yourself, who do I need to become to create the results that I want? And what identity would make my goals inevitable? Step 4, reprogram your subconscious. Now, how do I install a new identity into my subconscious? Repetition, visualization, evidence, environment, and language. It is important that all 5 are present. Step 5, act from the new identity. Don't wait to feel like the new identity. Act like it first. Your feelings will follow. This is why I keep stressing the feelings should never dictate the action. The action should dictate the feelings. Okay. And last but not least, step 6, you need to expect resistance. Your subconscious will resist this new identity. It will try to pull you back. Expect it, but don't give in to it. Okay. So that is the 6 steps. I hope those steps actually serve you well. If you did not get it, go back and check it out on the replay. Because it will be there for you guys to listen to moving forward. So that being said, greatly appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. And that being said, that takes us to this bittersweet moment, which is our final thoughts.
Man, I'm excited just about what this episode is going to do for the people that it reaches. Whoever it reaches, I know it's going to help. So I thank you, Mindset Coach, for that. So the question, and I'm going to say it out loud so that we can hear it, is how does a man's identity shift impact his ability to lead, provide, and serve in the marketplace? So, I'm just going to go down this line, right? Because first we start with identity. I think identity gives us direction. And direction gives me the understanding of who my leader is, right? Or let me reframe that. My identity allows me to know who my leader is. That gives me direction. Direction is now that direction is how I can now base myself as a leader of where my family and my community is going. If I have no direction, if I have no leadership, I'm not leading nobody nowhere. I'm just telling people what to do for the sake of hearing my voice, because I'm supposed to be in charge, because I'm a man. So I'm just going to bark out orders. But identity says, this is who I am. This is what we look like. This is where we're going. This is what we talk like. This is how we dress. This is how we act. This is who we are. And it's important, and our name is attached to it, to Coach's point. Provide, I think identity creates purpose. It gives us a purpose and a drive, and it causes us to push. And as you know, if a man don't work, that man don't eat, right? I think that's also right in the kingdom. If we don't do the works of the kingdom, we don't eat in the kingdom. But providing for our community and for our family, that drive comes from knowing who we are. Look at our community and a bunch of men who are not given an identity. We're doing what? We're doing anything. We're flashing, we're buying diamonds, driving cars, blah, blah, blah. But who are we providing for? Who's the benefactor of all of this work? That direction comes in that identity. And the lack of identity, right, causes me to boast, causes me to try to prove that I'm somebody, walking my chest out loud for no reason, right? Saying a whole bunch of stuff and there's no substance. That's because I don't know who I am, and I'm trying to convince you that I do. Matter of fact, I know who I want you to see me as, and I'm trying to convince you that I'm that person, right? But when I have my identity, when that identity shift happens, I become now secure in myself, to where I'm no longer serving my own self-interest. I'm serving the Most High, but by a byproduct of serving the Most High, I serve His people. He asks Peter, he said, well, do you love me? He said, well, you know, feed my sheep. I asked him again, Peter, do you love me? Lord, you know, all right, feed my sheep. Then I know he's getting on his nerve, because he asked him a third time, Peter, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know I love you. Well, feed my sheep. When that identity, remember, he's another man whose name was changed because the Father saw that the work on the inside was happening and changed his name. All right. So now he's telling you, identity shift happens. Serve my people, man and woman, but as men, hearts of men, serve my people. And that's what he's asking of us. That's who we are becoming. That's what the word minister means. It means to serve.
Man, I love it. I greatly appreciate that. And for those of you who didn't pick up what that brother was saying, Cephas was Peter's other name. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I think there's a lot of value that can be gained in this conversation. Let me say this, and it may not necessarily be a comfortable thing for some people to hear. Every man is not going to lead. Every man is not called to lead. That is probably a very uncomfortable truth for some men to hear, but it shouldn't be. I believe wholeheartedly that some people have a calling on their life because they were called to do something significant in the kingdom. And then other men have a calling on their life because they were called to be the support system for that thing that is supposed to be significant in the kingdom. But if I need to be the quarterback of the football team and the team already got a quarterback and that quarterback has been blessed off and is actually better than me, then I might need to find peace with the fact that I'm being part of the football team. Maybe being a backup quarterback is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Every man is not going to lead. Every man is not called to lead. That's okay. But every man has a responsibility to lead. And the first person that they need to lead is themselves. When I have a properly formatted identity, then I can lead myself authentically. I'm not putting on a facade. I'm not putting on airs. I'm not trying to impress anybody else. I am trying to honor what the Most High has called me to do. So I'm leading myself in the direction of his calling, in the direction of his word, in the direction of his will. And then when I focus on leading myself according to his word, according to his commandment, the Spirit shows up and help me because I'm going to struggle with it. Because make no mistake about it, this thing gets a vote. This flesh, it gets a vote. It's going to fight. It's going to fight back. It's going to be like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But we got to do it. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So you're going to go back and forth. You're going to have conflict with yourself, right? But when I have this properly formatted identity that allows me to humble myself, protecting myself from myself, so that the Holy Spirit can do the work that's within me that needs to be done, then I can not only lead myself, but I can esteem others higher than myself. And when I esteem others higher than myself, then I can provide for others. And what am I providing? I'm providing support. I'm providing friendship. I'm showing myself to be friendly. I'm providing counsel when need be. I am providing mentorship. I am providing companionship in the time of the need of a brother. I'm doing all of those things, not because my flesh is calling me to do it, not because I'm looking for them to pat me on the back when they go through, finish through whatever it is they're going through. It's because that's what I should do. That's what we're called to do as men. And then the end, serve in the marketplace. I do it in such a degree that people who are not a part of the kingdom actually see how we behave, see how we treat each other, see how we love one another, so that they can see it and be like, man, that's what the body of Christ looks like. I've seen it wrong for so many years. That's what the body of Christ look like. And you know what? Can you introduce me to the thing that you went through to get to where you are? Yep, I sure can. I think that's what it looks like when a man's identity shift impact his ability to lead, provide, and serve in the marketplace. Listen, we greatly appreciate you guys, greatly appreciate your support, greatly appreciate all the value that you guys were putting in the comment section, man. I so love it. Come back, like they said on Friday. Come back every Friday, p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is our sincerest desire to give you the best versions of ourselves in that particular moment. And I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna say this, Gaddy. I think that looks like is in the midst of these conversations, we humble ourselves and allow the Ruach to lead. We're just the vessels for him to speak through. And that's our true intent. So that being said, listen, you guys continue to be awesome. Love on somebody. Allow the Spirit to work through you for the sake of somebody else. Because there's a lot of hurt people out there, man, if y'all ain't figured it out yet. So until next week, let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else. And we'll see you guys next week here on the Hearts of Men.